going to send you a link, or they will say, can you share your screen? At that point, you can just minimize everything because they don't know what's happening here yet, right? So if I start minimizing here, just tell them, yep, let me go ahead and open an editor for you, right? And on the meantime, what I'm doing is I'm just hiding everything that's there. And you can see this, but I mean, you can see all these windows, but they don't know what it is, okay? They don't have time to focus on, oh, you have IntelliJ open. Tell me, show me what's in there. They will not say that. They'll just say, go ahead and open your editor, any editor, or they may even send you a link and they will say, okay, open the link and let's now start reviewing, or let me send you this code, okay? So that's what's gonna happen, and that's how you need to handle. And that's one of the easiest ways to, to remember in an interview, having the small notes open. Maybe you can have your notes, right? Sticky notes. There is so many features, guys. Well, don't look at the passwords, guys. Okay, so here, right, you have different type of stickies where you have notes, okay? So let's say here, I'm gonna have one sticky, which is going to remind me about a topic that I cannot remember, AWS. Topic that I cannot remember. What is AWS? Or tell me about your AWS experience. Okay, just 1 second. Tell me about your AWS experience. So here in my quick notes, I'm gonna have, in my current project, I am using AWS EC2s to execute my performance test using Unix commands and getting the reports. I have configured my EC2 to EC2, as well as I have experience with S3 buckets, verifying and navigating, getting in, let's say, those services, right? So just like that, I have one sticky note somewhere in my screen. Then I'm gonna have another sticky note somewhere in my screen following for those questions that are very hard for me to explain. So if they ask me, right, in the interview, tell me about your experience with AWS, without me looking elsewhere or looking at my notes that are written in a paper, I can just look at the screen directly, right, where pretty much my eyes are on the video, and I can start speaking by reading, right? In my current project, I am using AWS EC2 to execute my performance test using Unix commands to get the reports. I have also configured my EC2 as well as I have navigated in S3 buckets and validated some of those data. Okay, so by just having those notes, I quickly answered that interview question about AWS. Now, if they go more in depth, then just tell them, currently in this project, I was mostly working with only those two components, but I'm glad to learn if there is anything else that you guys are using, right? So pretty much that's how you guys can have your setup, right? Always have something prepared. Don't just have your window blank like that, right? Don't have anything there and do the interview, because this is not gonna help you. By now, we're not very confident, right, in the interviews, but by having some notes definitely will help you remember about those interviews. So this is what you need to have. Now let us picture API testing in our project. Okay. In our project, whether it's Capital One, whether it's AT&T, Comcast, or a healthcare application, no matter what is your current project, to each of these projects, okay? There is one project here, one project here, one project here. We need to come up with our own story to tell. What do I mean, our own story to tell? 1 second, let me just open one of, sorry guys, I was watching a movie while working. That's what you do when you start working, guys. Don't be like me. Most of the time I'm just watching movies and not productive, to be honest. But they don't say anything at work as long as I do my job, and that's what you guys can do as well. So One second, let me just open the, let's say here. Okay, so let me open this bank application, okay? For some of you guys have healthcare in your resumes, you guys have bank applications, you guys have Comcast, Verizon, hotels, maybe, whatever is the application, you need to come up with one story, okay? Same way that you guys have been working in, let's say, on your previous jobs. If you were, let's say, working for the hospital, then you have a little bit experience on healthcare, how the application work. If you were working in the past in a banking, then you know how the application works. If you make a deposit or if you use your online banking account, you definitely know how to use the application. In order for us to explain API testing with our projects, we always need to look at what's the application look like. If you guys think about it, any application that you use, it always has a login, right? This login is already been tested many times because this was the first thing that they developed at the beginning of the stage. But in your project, right, whenever you're working in your project, you always need to log in order for you to perform any different API requests. So you need to authentify, right? You need to authentify your application. In order for us to use anything inside, right now, if I want to do a transfer, is it possible for me to do a transfer? It is not possible, right? Because I need to be able to log in first of all. If I don't log in, then I cannot perform that task itself. So let me go ahead and use this pen. I don't know why it's doing this. Okay. So 1 second. Okay, so in order for us to work in the application, we need to perform the first action, okay? So in your projects, whenever you're explaining about APIs, you need to always mention to them, in order for me to work with API, I first of all need to perform a login function, right? So this is the step number 1, which is logging in, okay? So this is this function right here. Once we log in, okay, this login itself has an API as well. Okay, how can I look at this API request in here? So there is many ways to do it. One, you can mention to them, I use the Swagger documentation. If you don't remember what's the Swagger, let me go ahead and show you guys. After I clear my screen. Okay, so we use the Swagger. All right, so in your current project, okay, and let's write it down. Okay, so let us, in my current project, and we'll discuss this about each of them. Okay, we have 3, oh, where did my last one go? Hold on, right there. So explain, API testing. Let's come up with some stories, okay, for each of these ones here, because if we don't have stories, then they will not believe us, right? So first of all, for bullet number 1 or point number 1. So just go by reference by the numbers, okay? So 1 is this one here. Pretty much in my current project, we have API documentation in Swagger where I perform most of the requests. Okay, so what do I mean with this? Let me explain now. In a Swagger, let me show you guys here. In a Swagger, okay, we have different type of requests. One of those requests is pretty much login, okay? So it's pretty much login. So if I start looking for it, login or sign in. Okay, so let's look for it. I know that it's here. You need to be a little bit familiar with these applications, or the working applications. This is Swagger. Swagger contains different endpoints, okay? It is just a list of endpoints, pretty much. Swagger, it's a website where developers create API endpoint directories. so that anybody, whether it's product owner, whether it's the customer, whether it's you, they can access these APIs, okay? Without these APIs, you cannot perform some of the tasks, okay? You can perform through the UI, yes. We can click and click and click, right, in the application. But if you want to test the API, developers, they create this type of format here, okay? Whether it's this one, whether it's a different kind, they're the ones that create with this type of documentation. They are the ones that provides us with this documentation, okay? So I'm just trying to find here for us the login.
I may ask some maybe stupid question, but in the Swagger that you open right now, is that the one that you guys use in the real life, in the real work?
Yes, we use this a lot. Pretty much, it is one of the applications that it's heavily used because many people have experience on how to create it, especially developers. For them, it's easy to create this type of endpoints in order for them to present what they're doing. And in order for them to have a list of APIs, okay? So this here, it is valid. I mean, whatever I'm showing you, it's not something that we came up from school and we want to teach you now. This is something that you can talk about, okay? So whenever you are in an interview, you can tell them in a project, we pretty much use Swagger. And in the Swagger, we have different endpoints. So for your interview, maybe you can have one window open, just like that on one side, showing a Swagger. Okay, so if you want to talk about it, you can say, we have many different endpoints in Swagger. This is the documentation that the developer created for us in order for us to do the testing. Pretty much that's what this is for, right? So just 1 second, I'm messing with this. Okay, so that's what this documentation is for. I'm trying to look real quick, sorry, that endpoint which is login. You can also find it through the UI, okay? So in the UI, let's say here, right, this login, whenever we do any type of, when we inspect the element and we go to the network, you have access to all the APIs that are on this application here, okay? So if I press login, and let's say I have my account here already saved, right? This is, let's say, a customer's account. I'm testing a customer's account with, let's say that this is a made up name, okay? When I perform login function, then there is going to be an API call made, right? So 1 second here. There is so many errors. Do you see that? All these errors that are coming up, those are the errors that you need to mention to them. Right now it's gone, but it came up, and I would just reach out to my developer and tell him, when I send the request to log in, right? This is sign in. If you see here, this is an API endpoint, okay? So I'm just gonna copy this so that I can have one explanation in our document, right? So I'm just gonna copy this endpoint. Oops, sorry. Copy this endpoint. I'm gonna go back to my document here. That looks so ugly. Let me see if I can just copy this line here. So this is an API endpoint, okay? So whenever you're working in any application, whether it's a banking application, I just hit that, guys. 1 second. You need to tell them, right? I'm working with HTTP requests, and whenever I am performing any API testing, I am sending a request to the API. So that's hideous. Okay, that's fine. So here, this is what's happening, right? In my current project, we have API documentation in Swagger where I perform most of the API requests. RESTful API or REST API, REST Assure API, or however they want to call it, it's still API, okay? It's just fancy ways to say you have experience or you're working with REST Assure or you're working with API testing. REST Assure, it's mostly pointing towards the code where, we write the code itself. This is REST Assure, guys, okay? This is REST Assure, right? Because we're using this given, then, when, and so on and so on. This is REST Assure, okay? That's what they mean whenever they say rest assured. Do you have experience with rest assured, or have you automated any tests in API? Yes, I automated using rest assured library. But if they are just talking about API in general, you can talk about Postman, right? So I can tell them in my current project, we have API documentation in Swagger where I perform most of the API requests. One of the requests that we normally go through is the login with different accounts. We use admin accounts. We also use user accounts, okay? And this applies for any application, not only on this case for me, it's this company, right?
It can be for healthcare, for health. In order for you to log into your healthcare application, you need to do a login itself.
Okay, you need to do a login. If you want to go, let's say, through a Verizon account, you need to log in, right? This is an endpoint. So just have this as an example, right? So so what we do is we test with different type of accounts. Okay, so after, right, I send the request to log in. I get a token.
Let's say to work with all the other requests. So what do I mean with the token?
Once we log in, okay, so let me tell you like this, right? If I give you the key, let's say give you a key to a door, you will use the key to get into the house. Maybe the key itself will open any other doors, right? So that's similar scenario here. When we sign into the application, we're going to get in the response a token, okay? The response will be a token. This token will allow us to access all the other different functionalities in the application. Without the token, we cannot work in the application because we haven't signed in, okay? So when we do a login, that means that, okay, now we have access to all the different parts of the application. So let me scroll down. So let me press remind me later. Here, once we log in, we have access to all these different accounts, right? We have access to transfer payments, services, settings, and such. Without the login, we're not able to see any of these accounts, right? So the goal here for us is to understand whenever we perform any API testing, whether it's through the UI, whether it's an API, whether it's just pure API, no UI, right? We need to perform those different requests. So in some of the projects, they don't have a UI yet, okay? So let's just assume that this application that you see here, right, this, oh my goodness, I hate this thing. Okay, so let's just assume that there is no UI here, okay? So this application doesn't exist. It's just API pretty much. And right now, the developers, they're working to develop this application that you see here right now. Okay, they're the ones that are currently working to design this feature called accounts, to design this feature called payment transfers, services, and such. Right now, it's not developed yet. They're still working on it, or they just have design how it should look like, but they don't have anything else. So at this point, what do you do, right? We only have API endpoints at this point. So 1 second. Okay, so we only have API endpoints at this point. In order for us to work with those API endpoints, we need to look at the documentation. This is where your job gets more interesting, because all you have is this documentation to do the testing, nothing else. Here you have pretty much the steps that you need to follow. You need to understand what are these different requests, what is this design doing, what is this SLA doing. So in order for you to understand what all of these requests are doing, you need to have a meeting with the developer and ask him, can you tell me a little bit about the Swagger endpoints? What are these different requests are for? What are they for, right? What do I need to pass in this, let's say, post? What's the body that I need to pass? And sometimes it will already be here one schema like this. It means that this application takes an ID, a user ID, workspace ID, and then you can leave this as it is, right? Because there's nothing inside. But these values, how do I come up with it? I mean, do I need to make up these names? Do I need to come up with my own ID? Do I need to make up this user ID? Or who provides me with these IDs? That's what you need to ask to the developer. Okay, you need to reach out to the developer and ask, is there an ID that we use for this account or to test? If it says no, you can enter any values, then pretty much you can enter any values in there. But if it says no, you need to get this user ID from another request, call members ID, then you need to send this request here. So that's why API itself, it does take a little bit more time to understand. But how does it work with our projects again, right? So the goal is for us to understand in our project. In order for us to work with those different endpoints, we need to first of all perform the API endpoint login. And then once we log in, we can perform any of these requests. So if you look at the endpoints that we have listed here, if I press where it says relationship savings, right? There's gonna be one API endpoint just to give me some details about that endpoint as well. So we just need to look for it here, okay? We just need to look, and that's what you need to do at work. So this one is saying post request. It is not a post request. It should be a get request for us. So we'll keep looking. Always look at the response value, okay? The response value will tell you if you're looking at the right request or not, okay? So we'll keep looking, and sometimes those are internal. We cannot see it here because those applications, they will not provide balances or those kind of details, right? I mean, it's all hidden. Only if you work internally, you may be able to see it, not to the public, right? We are the public right now. So like that, it's not there. That's fine. Maybe I can click somewhere that maybe payments and services. So payments and services here. This is an API endpoint called payments and transfers home. It is a get request, okay? So if I were to just copy this request, and if I want to open it here, okay, it takes me directly there as well, but that's not what I need. I need the API endpoint, right? So in order for us to go to the endpoint, we can put it in Postman and see if it's going to send a request or not. If it sends the request, so let me try it, right, to show you guys. If it sends the request, then that means that this feature doesn't accept any token, or it doesn't need to go through a security token verification. So we'll verify that right now, so you guys can just visualize it and see what this is. Sending the request, and I am getting status code 200. That means that I am able to see in this format. It is an HTML because on the headers, the response body, it's probably here HTML. Okay, so this content type, it is coming back as HTML, not JSON, because it's not a JSON response. So here I'm able to see pay your bills, pay your mortgage loan. So let's look and see where this is located here, okay? So let's go back into the application itself. That's where this is located. It's not giving any details about my account, but it is just showing the details from this URL here, from these payments and transfers. Those are the different endpoints here. So at this point, we send a request to that endpoint and it's working. We're getting a status code 200. So we already validated this status code 200 by writing a simple test, right? So we can just add a validation for status code 200. So we send a request and we validate that the status code is passing, not failing. If I want to create a failed scenario, then I'm just going to change the status code and I'm going to verify that this is pretty much not the status code 201. It is coming back as status code 200. Okay, so now let's go back here to understand the project. So in my current project, we have an API documentation where we perform most of the API requests, okay? We use admin accounts. We also use user accounts to test, right? To test. Why do we need to use different accounts? Because admin has more privileges than the user. If the user has the same privileges as the admin, then there is something wrong. Users should never be able to perform tasks, some of the tasks that admins can. Maybe the administrator can delete accounts. User cannot delete accounts. When you do your testing in API and you are able to log in and delete accounts, then there is a bug. Okay, the user should never be able to delete accounts. So scenarios like that, it's what you need to come up with whenever they ask you about. Okay, so tell me about an issue that you face in API, or tell me about some of the scenarios on API. So what do I mean? Whenever you go into your application, please, if you have a banking account, if you have a healthcare account, just go inside your application. If you're talking about, let's say, services and then mobile deposits, if that's your topic that you're talking about, and you're talking about, let me select something else here. Hold on. Okay. So let's say you are talking about my profile. In my current project, we're working in my profile. We're pretty much here, sorry, right there. But pretty much we are validating user ID, the password that the user creates, security questions, and income of employment. We are validating all those different accounts with two different users. One is admin, the other one is the user itself. As an admin, the admin is able to, let me see what else can admin do. The admin is able to change the password or delete the password anytime, but the user, once they set the password, then they cannot edit. Okay, so you can mention something like that. Okay, so that's one story, or that's different stories that you guys can think of. That's why it's important for you to navigate into your application, if it is banking, if it's healthcare. And anyway, can any of you guys just give me what's on your current project, what company is on your current project? And I'll come up with a story in just a few seconds. Anyone, just either send a message on this chat, or just unmute yourself and tell me what is the company on your project, on your current project.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, I told him that I'm working on the internal web applications, and I told him that I'm responsible for transferring, and what else? Deposit functionality, and also what else? So transfer, deposit, and sorry, I have wrote it somewhere.
Okay, so just stick with, for each project, okay, we all need to stick with just one story, okay? So let's say for my current project here, let's see, for API testing, we'll come up with one story as well, but for each story, just stick with one functionality, okay? Right now, you described to me almost 3 different functionalities. One, you said transfers. The other one, you said deposit accounts, which is a different type of functionality.
Okay.
And maybe the third one is something else. Now, when you're working in a project, you only work on specific functionalities. You can still make your way out of those by saying, I started working in transfers, then once that was completed, we started working in deposits, and once that completed, we started doing transfers again, or something like that. But we are at this point complicating ourselves. So if we pretty much look at this window here, right? And just talk about this feature pretty much can take a few months to complete, because there is so many factors that happen here. There is so many things that happen here. Okay, so let me just quickly explain you that. in here, we have UI application, okay? This is the UI application. Out of the UI, we have also the API application. Then we have the database. So in all these layers, just for this transfer, right? That's why I say it will take a few months. While the developer for the backend is creating the tables, remember there is a relational database and also non-relational databases. So let's just say that this is a relational database where they are creating tables for these fields. One of the fields is called from, right? So from. Then another field is called to another column, right? And then there's another column called amount. And they all belong to one table called details, okay? So this one belongs to details. Then there is another one, another table called review, another table called confirmation. So all this work that's happening here, just the back end, okay? This may take probably 1 month, let's just say 1 month. Because they need to configure the database, they need to do testing from the backend. You or whoever's doing the testing for the backend, they will write queries, right? They will say select all from, let's say, a details account, right? So details. So whatever comes as a result, they will do the validation manually, or they will use JDBC to validate this backend. So now the API is next, because backend always is first. We need to set up all the different tables so that now the API can make the request into these tables here using HTTP requests, right? So there is HTTP requests, get, post, put, delete, right? Put and delete. Those are the different endpoints that we are sending using the API through to the backend, okay? And now what's happening here, this will take another 1 month to complete. Once this is done and full testing is completed, right? So what do I mean with testing? I can also zoom in. Anyways, so once testing is completed here, there is also what's happening here. Integration testing. Remember when we cover integration testing? What is integration testing? Is pretty much having two pieces working together, okay? So just understanding the definition of integration. What does integration mean? It means that we are integrating what, right? We're integrating either, you can say, what can I say, just so that we can understand. Okay, anyways, we are on this stage, we're integrating the backend with the API, okay? We're now putting those two pieces together, and are they going to work with each other? That's the goal for integration testing. Now, that may also take some time, right? So that's why here already has been 2 months to develop this application, which is simply just for the account transfer. And now it's the UI. The UI may take probably, let's just say 2 months, because they need to design, they need to, with the UI, they need to make a connection to the API, and the API needs to work with the backend. Okay, so at the end, they all need to get a response, right? So that's why this is, that's how the applications work, right? So we write something in the UI, it goes to the API, and from the API, it goes into the backend. Then we get a response. We can get a response in the API by looking at the JSON, or we can get a response in the UI by looking at what the UI looks like. Okay, so what happens here as well? What's happening here? We're also seeing a integration, right? So integration. Also here is the same thing, integration. Because backend and API, they both are integrating. API and the UI, they're integrating. Front-end developers, right, they don't have too much idea how the backend works. They only design in the front end, and they use these APIs, okay, they use the APIs to make that connection into the server. if the APIs don't work as expected, that's why we do the integration testing to find issues. What type of issues can we find when we do integration testing? Maybe when we send this request where it says from, let me just delete this now. Maybe when we send this request that says from, okay, if we select here checking account, okay, but when we click checking account, it is not loading checking account, it's loading savings account, right? So it's supposed to load checking, but instead it is loading savings account. What is the problem, or where is this problem? That's why we need to debug it, okay? So this is where you need to look at the logs. In the logs, where are those logs located? They're on the cloud, okay? There is different services that pretty much use the cloud. In the cloud, you can find services such as Docker or DCOS, like that. Those are services or platforms where you host applications, okay? So these are platforms in the cloud that host applications. What does it mean, cloud? It just means that it is sitting somewhere on some server. It's not located in your server at home, no. It is somewhere on the cloud, okay? The cloud, it's pretty much imaginary, right? It's just data that's sitting somewhere. That's what the cloud is referring to. It's not referring to AWS or specifically to Amazon, no. There could be many services using the cloud service. They provide this service so that applications can run on them. That's what the cloud means, okay? So in these logs that we're looking at to find the issues. What is the issue that we're seeing in this? Why is it selecting, when we select from the drop down, once we click in checking account, then pretty much it's loading savings account. In the logs, once we look at the logs, we identify that the response that we're getting is coming from the API. The response that we're getting from the API, it's pretty much saying that, okay, if you select checking, then the response that you're getting is savings, okay? That's the response that it's coming back from the API. 1 second before it times out. Stay online. Okay. So going back to this application here. So it is coming from the API itself. So at this point, there is an issue. While we were performing integration testing, we found this issue. And it is a bug, right? Because we have identified that this dropdown, it is not returning the correct value. So we are going to speak to the developer. Developer will say, okay, it is a bug. Then he will say, can you create a ticket? Right, create a ticket. This ticket, you're gonna create it and you will assign it to the developer. Developer will fix it. Oops, 1 second, guys. Okay, once he fixes this, he will send it back to you. He will say, okay, Alex, I fixed it. Can you review it? Can you look at it again? You will test it, and if this is complete, you will mark it done, pretty much. And then again, you will come back to this feature, you will test and see if this bug is still there. If it's not there, then you will just pretty much continue with your testing, okay? So that's what's happening here in those different layers of the application. You have the UI. Let me just clean this real quick, sorry guys. Okay, so you have the UI, you have the API, and as well as the backend. That's why whenever you're explaining about your application, you just need to speak about the small functionality, not the entire application itself, like, user accounts, then account details. No, just focus on a small piece. If it's healthcare, just logging into your account. I'm sure that some of you guys have some insurance, or maybe you have seen some applications. Maybe your mother has insurance. If they have insurance, then they have access to Aetna or Blue Cross Blue Shield, any type of doctor. Even if you visited your doctor office, you have access to the online or to your online account where you can look at your results, make schedule appointments. So if in your resume you see that there is one application that it's healthcare, go into that application and just grab a small functionality from there so you can picture yourself what this story is about, right? So here I can just capture this image right for me so that I can remember and I can put it in my notes. So here I said for my third job, right? So for my third job, it's capital one. So here I'm just gonna touch my screenshot so that I can talk about this functionality as well. In my current project, I am pretty much working in this transfers functionality. It is an internal application where we are pretty much where we are testing different type of requests with different endpoints, transferring from checking accounts, savings accounts, or money market accounts into different accounts using APIs and verifying the response codes as well as what the response is, entering different values for the amount, also entering letters. So you can pretty much start talking, right? If I start typing with ABCs, I see that nothing's coming in there. If I put numbers, yes, I see numbers coming. If I put spaces, if I try to enter spaces, nothing comes up. Okay, so but I see the dot in there. Okay, so that's a decimal, which is understandable. But I don't know why would you have decimals in there. I guess if you want to make it exact, right? So even like these applications, how would this handle it? See how this is behaving? Is this expected, right? Is this expected for you as a tester? No, right? This is definitely not something that you want to transfer. Okay, so let's say if I select my savings account into my credit card account, then I want to transfer. Let's just try to replicate the same issue. Again, the dots came in there, right? If I click anywhere else, what's happening now? Nothing's happening. It's not rounding now. It's not rounding up the number, but it is accepting this dollar amount that it's in there. So let me go ahead and actually just do $1. Let me pay extra into this credit card and let's see what happens here, right? Because I am now interested to see if it's going to overdraw my account for 1,200 or 1 million or whatever this value is, or it's just going to decline this transaction here. So I'm going to press next. You can explain, right? In my project, pretty much I was testing with different endpoints here, from account to account. Those are endpoints, right? Because this can be considered an endpoint here. So let me go ahead and just write it down. 1 second. This could very well be one endpoint, right? HTTP www.mtv.api.com, and then here we can say the endpoint is from, right? And then pretty much is the parameters, right? Whatever is the parameters. So in this case, I'm gonna put params is going to be checking equals to true, right? So now I'm passing values, right? I'm saying that I'm selecting, checking, yes, that's what I'm selecting. This is one of the endpoints that I can say, right? And then there's another endpoint, HTTP www.mte.api.com. This part I'm making it up, right? But if you look at it, it makes sense. So the next endpoint is to, and then here I'm selecting visa equals to true. So I'm selecting my visa card in this API endpoint. So I have two different endpoints. One, selecting from which account, and then the other endpoint is selecting to which account I want to transfer. And then the body, right, because this is part of the body. In the JSON body, I am passing values such as, let's say here, amount equals to, let's say here, whatever it's this dollar amount that I just put in there. like that. Then just leave it like that, okay? That's the body that I'm sending in this request that I'm performing here. And pretty much the time, whatever the time format is, we can put it all in one JSON here if we need to. But what we need to do is we need to understand the project, right? This project is making a transfer between accounts, and what's happening here, we have different endpoints that we test, or we have one big endpoint here, right? We can say we have one big endpoint called details. Okay, so this could be also another endpoint, www or http www.api.com, and then here we can say details endpoint, right? And then after details, there is here parameter, or we can leave it there, right? We can say that this is the endpoint, and the JSON body that we're using, it pretty much looks like this. So let me just write down one different scenario. So the JSON that we are using is from account, right? So from account. So this is a JSON, and this one is selecting checking, comma, then to account. Let's say here savings. Okay, then comma, then we have amount, right? Then amount would be in dollars or int values, right? Whatever is the value, comma, and then we have date, schedule, right? We can call it schedule, date, today, whatever it's the day, and then frequency, and this is another JSON request, right? So we can say for this endpoint would be one time. There's different options, but we're going to be selecting one time. And pretty much closing that JSON object here, okay? 1 second, let me delete this space right there. So this endpoint that you see here called details has a payload. This is a post request, okay? So post request, right there, right there. We're sending a post request to this endpoint called details, and we're passing a parameter of JSON, which pretty much has a from, which account checking, to savings, amount, schedule date, and such and such. Now, I can perform different type of testings, right? So when I perform testing, I can also change from, instead of saying checking, I'm gonna put here my, let's say, or also another thing that you can do is say, delete this from, right? So what happens if I send a request with just this field here? Savings. This is a invalid testing or negative testing, right? Because we're going to be sending maybe with only two parameters. So I'm going to say amount. Then amount would be whatever it's the amount. And pretty much that's it. That's the JSON that I'm going to send in this request called details. So in my current project, what I was doing, I was performing negative testing, positive testing, as well as I was sending with the JSON body that I needed to verify if this functionality works as expected. Now, when I send a API request to the application, I validate different fields. One, status code 200 or 201 if it's creating. If it's a post request, I'm supposed to be validating a status code 201. If also I am validating the JSON type, if it's a content type JSON, as well as the data that I'm getting as a return, the response body. So once I send the request, I'm supposed to see account savings, as well as the dollar amount, as well as the schedule date, frequency, from date, and also an ID. Now, when I was performing negative testing, I passed only two parameters instead of pretty much the entire JSON format. I also tested by sending invalid JSON payload. Okay, so JSON payload is here, right? Where's my, oops, sorry. I'm gonna open Postman after this, okay? So whenever you send any type of data, you need to do different type of testings. You can also change maybe here, right, where it says from, you can put their credit card, or you can put here HELOC, or you can put any other type of account if it's gonna take it. You can also enter in here, right? So you can also enter where it says from. You can also enter numerical values and see if this is going to be accepted or not. Okay, so like that, right? So next one will be savings and such and such. You can also create that type of scenario where you are entering the numerical data in a string only data. If it works, then there is a problem, there is an issue, right? So now, if you see this, we have already three scenarios. One, positive scenario, expected result. Second one is this negative scenario where I am actually only sending two parameters instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters. And then the last one, pretty much I'm changing that data type. Instead of passing string, I'm passing integer values. And when I perform the tests, they all are supposed to be failing. Okay, so let me take screen. Well, we don't take screenshot. Let me just take a screenshot for you guys of this here, okay? Just this, so you can see this API endpoint and a few scenarios here that can help you. 1 second. Clear my screen. Stay online, yes, okay. So let me just keep adding here to this documentation. Examples for testing API. And then I'm gonna organize this for you guys, okay? So I'm gonna send you this so you can see what type of scenarios you can think of and what type of scenarios you can explain as well in the interview. So I was saying in Postman, when I perform testing, right? In the post request, what I do is, let's say here, post request, in the body, I am passing pretty much but different values of JSON, right? So we mentioned one, let's say for from, when I do API testing, I also validate the data type, if it will accept numerical values or not. So two should only accept here strings, right? So savings account and such and such. So that's how I perform API testing in my project. Validate the response code, content type, the response body, and also whenever I am sending data, I make sure to validate with different type of data types. Okay, so that's what you need to tell them in the interview. So next, I'm gonna go next and see what's happening here. Okay, great. It is telling me that please enter a valid amount in the format of date date. In the application, it is accepting like this, but once we press next, we're expecting this error here, which is something that we need to validate when we do testing, whether it's UI, API, or
Rest assured.
pretty much those two only. In the backend, you don't get this error. Only in the API and the UI, you will see this error here. When you send a request to this endpoint called details with these parameters, you should be seeing this error here, okay? If you don't see this error here, then it takes you into the next step, which is review. Then pretty much that is a bug, okay? You're supposed to see this error here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and enter what they're expecting me to enter. 2 and 2, pretty much, that's how it rounded up the value, which is okay. Press next, okay, it's saying, your transfer cannot be processed at this time, we're sorry for the inconvenience to complete this transaction, blah, 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 blah. So this is probably something. Oh, wow, look at that. I can only probably transfer between this time. I don't know if this is some type of limitation, but anyways, the next step is going into the review and verifying that review. But first of all, just talk about this, and this is more than enough. More than definitely explaining about your project. You don't need to go into any other details. Just focus on small pieces, whether it's healthcare, UI, banking application, whatever you have. Find a small application to talk about, okay? And then just start talking about it. So going back here to our API here, explain API testing. In my current project, we have API documentation and Swagger, where I perform most of the API requests. We perform this. We use different accounts, right? Admin account and user account to test the application. After I send the request to login, I get the token to work with all the other requests. Then I perform my API testing for the different endpoints. Okay, so this is pretty much for one of the projects that I can talk about. For the second project, which is here, Fannie Mae Mortgage, I can just briefly tell or talk about the UI experience in here, because not all the projects have API or UI, or not all the projects have backend. Maybe for this one, I can talk about the backend. In my in Fannie Mae, while I work for Fannie Mae, I was mostly working in backend applications, performing SQL queries, writing some test cases using JDBC library. Also, for your interview, please have your JDBC, okay? So just have JDBC open at middle quarter. Let me just find one of the accounts here. 1 second. Okay. Let me just go to one of my GitHub accounts and open one of my complete test cases. Let's see if this one has everything I need. Nope. Just 1 second. I just want to show you guys on the, what you need to have on your Windows open. See this one. This one as well. This JDBC. Okay, good. So here, I'm just gonna have this pretty much in there, right? So if I'm having an interview which includes some backend API, I'm gonna have two windows open mostly where I'm gonna focus. One, it's gonna be my backend, and the other one would be my rest assured here, right? So with those two windows, I can just help myself. When they ask me, okay, can you tell me about your experience with JDBC? I can start going over this here. So in my current project, we were using JDBC library, where we were using 3 different interfaces. One is called connection, the other one statement and result set. I was using mostly result set to write some of the SQL queries, where was the result that I was getting from this query was saved in a variable called result, and from there I was just doing the assertions, validating the response, and pretty much getting the queries from there, such as the count or whatever the query I was performing. If I was searching for something specific, then I would use result set that get string and then the value of that name. Pretty much that's how I was performing my backend testing. Okay, so that's what you need to have in your screen so you can feel more confident about your answers as well. This is just a placeholder, okay? It's just a placeholder. It's just like a sticky pad, right? You have a sticky pad somewhere that can help you refresh your memory. Similar here for API. If they ask me API, then I can just go through these scenarios and talk about it, explain what do I use given for, or what is response. Response pretty much allows me to store the values and validate those values using assertions, okay? That's why here on my second project, I'm saying I was mostly working in backend applications. So for the third one, I can say in couple one, right? I worked in the UI application, initially doing manual testing,
Do manual testing.
then applied Selenium
Apply
to automate
Selenium to
a
automate
front end.
the front end.
And then what you need to do is for each of these projects come up with one story as well. So for each of them, you need to come up with similar to this image here, right? So this one here can be applied for any banking application. If you have a PenFed, if you have a Capital One, if you have Wells Fargo, all the bank accounts, they have transfers, right? All of them, no matter if it's India bank account, Bolivia bank account, whether it's Russian bank account, they all have transfers, okay? So, but remember, nobody knows what it looks like. How many of you knew how this application looked like? Does anybody have an MNT bank account? Nobody probably has it. Probably I'm the only one here. But you don't know how the application looks. It looks nice compared to, let's say, Bank of America, or maybe Bank of America looks nicer. But at the end, I didn't talk about, MNT Bank. I talk about this application, which is mostly about details, where I am able to perform different type of requests, such as from account to account, selecting different dollar amounts, or specifying what amount that I want to transfer, schedule date, and the frequency. That's what I talk about. That's why in your projects, you need to come up with small stories to talk about, okay? So here, this you can explain for PenFed, right? So when I worked in PenFed, the application that I was actually working with my project, with my team, was called Transfers Details. And in there, we worked with different API requests. The endpoint was Details, in which we sent JSON payload using from account to account the dollar amount that the user wanted to transfer, as well as the schedule date and the frequency of the transfer. So in order for me to do the testing, I was doing validation, sending different type of payloads, such as JSON with only 2 objects, a JSON with different data types. Also, for positive testing, I was just sending the correct data. I was also validating status code 200. So, validation, right?
Status code.
In my project, I was validating status code 200 or 201, depending on the request. Also validating
Negative test.
different requests that I was getting, such as 400 or 500s, okay? That's in my current project, validating that status code. Just a second. Just do this here. Oops. Come on.
Come on.
Just so I get it. Okay. Oh, now it's doing that. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let's just go to the next one. Okay, let's just slip it. Okay, so once we set that, right, the micro project, also, I am validating the response body. The response body, which is format JSON. And for post requests and update or put requests. Okay,
JSON format.
I am validating the I am sending different type of payloads. A payload is the JSON body we send in the request. Okay, so this is the JSON body in the requests. So in our rest assured library, let me see if I'm using somewhere. I don't think so here. Probably here. Let me see if I'm using somewhere data. Nope, I'm not sending data. I wanted to show you guys in the JSON request itself on the payload. Post request, not here. Okay, that's fine. If you go back to our project, you can look at the JSON payload where we normally modify the data, right? Like this. Instead of sending a regular JSON, we are testing with different payloads. That's what this is referring to here, okay? So, and for the post request or put, because post or put always require a body, okay? So always require a body. I am sending different data types, so different type of payloads. One payload is this one here. This is another payload, and this is another payload. So I'm also doing a testing with different type of payloads, okay? That's what this is referring to. So here I'm explaining three different things. Now going back here into our project here. Again, here we did, for each project, we did the sizing for our project. In this project, I just attached one screenshot for this banking application so that I can better understand and better explain this application itself. So next here, Fannie Mae, a mortgage. I would say for the mortgage, you can find, or I don't think you guys have any mortgage.
Nope.
So whatever screenshot you can add for each of them to help you, please do it, okay? For this company here as well, I don't have anything to attach, but if you have anything that's reasonable to talk about, just attach that in there. So explaining API testing, again, we went into each of these fields. In my current project, we have API documentation, Swagger, where we perform most of the API requests. And then pretty much this is explaining now about the second project, and this is explaining about the third project. If they ask me, it doesn't mean that I need to tell them all this, right? It doesn't mean that I need to tell them all this, only if they ask me. If they ask you about your current project, then this is all you need to talk about. What did you do in your current project? Now that we have this here, pretty much that summarizes that part. This here is just one example on some of the scenarios for API testing when you send different payloads, and this is just the validation part in my current project. This is what I was doing pretty much. I'll just put it all together, okay? Now I will open for questions, for any questions that you guys have. Also, I will see if we can just look at one scenario. To be honest, for our scenarios, we pretty much just need to do a quick review. One of the, let me find the link for you guys. You guys can unmute yourselves while I find this link if you want. Don't be shy, guys. Muntaha or whoever has a question, please feel free to ask, okay?
I have a question. So one of the interviewer asked me, how do you log in with your application? Do you guys use Splunk? And I was like, I just tried log in.
Okay, good question. The market interview question. So I'm gonna put it in all one documentation, okay? And then I'll show this, guys. How do you log in? with the application, we use Splunk. Okay. We don't use Splunk. I know what Splunk is. We don't use Splunk in my project. To log in into the application, we use pretty much we use different accounts which provide us with the token, so we can perform requests in requests. Pretty much that's the answer that you need to give. Okay, so Splunk itself, it is an application. Let me show you here, Splunk. And that's for everybody as well. You may get the same recruiter guy. So Splunk itself, let me just go to the application. Okay, so Splunk in general performs many different solutions. It's just a platform where applications normally run, or they send the reports. Okay, that's why you're seeing here graphical reports, how the application is doing, what is happening. Normally, Splunk itself, it is configured so that, let's say, an application itself can be created in, or can send the data into the Splunk. The Splunk then will go ahead and create for you a nice graphical report, which is mostly used to see how the application is behaving, and pretty much that's all it is. Here it says it provides security, observability, platform, Splunk base. Not many companies locally are using this. Yes, there is integrations that are happening. Okay, this doesn't mean that Coca-Cola or Comcast are using it. It just means that they're using a small piece of Splunk. Okay, it doesn't mean that they are 100% using only Splunk. No. Whenever they, let's say, for us, right? If you guys find offers, we put the company that you find offer in our website saying that, oh, our students found jobs on these companies, right? It doesn't mean that you are full-time working with them. It just means that pretty much you have some type of relation with them. Similar here, right? Splunk in general, all it is, it's one. Let me see if there is one account here, or if I can create one real quick so that I can show you guys.
Optimize your tests.
Okay, CloudTrail. I agree. Another robot. Create my account. Oh, it's unavailable. Complex. Unavailable. Okay, this one's unavailable. I probably have an account already here. It seems that it's not taking my email. Let me try to sign in and see if it's still active. So pretty much it's just a platform where we have different type of services. That's all it is. See, it's a platform itself. It's a cloud platform. My dashboard, let me see here. Oh, this is hideous. Okay, final. Okay, Splunk Enterprise, Splunk Cloud. Okay, cloud platform versions, get started, service description. Splunk Cloud manual, no. Splunk web. Okay, customizations about simple XML. Visualization. I just want to show you guys how the UI looks. Okay, so this is how the UI looks. So let me see if there's more. No, This, let me zoom in a little bit more. So this is how the application itself looks like. Once we log in, pretty much we have different type of services inside Splunk itself. Those services could make different type of requests, or they could simply be, let's say, the database, then the UI and the APIs all in one platform itself. Splunk, that's what Splunk does. That's why they ask you, do you log in into Splunk to see all your accounts, or to see what's the application? In this case, for us, no, we don't do that. Okay, we don't use Splunk. There is other services, like I said, there is Docker, there is DCOS, there is many other platforms that do the same thing as this guy was asking. So in this case, the answer for us is we don't use Splunk in my project. To log in into the application, we use different accounts, which provide us with tokens so we can perform requests. For our environments, we use VPN. Okay, so for our environment, we use VPN. For our platform, runs in Docker. Just mention Docker. That's it. If they ask you more about Docker, the answer to that is, let me write down here. If they ask you about Docker, just tell them, all I do in Docker is look at the logs. Okay, so all I do in Docker is look at the logs. So let me show you one screenshot of that. Logs for Docker container. Let me just look for one image so that I can, that's how it looks. Like this, very ugly. It's not really understandable. Let me find a good one, and I'm going to take a screenshot and put it in there. That's how it looks. It's not really helpful logs, but that's what they use. So this is the type of logs that you look in Docker itself. So when they ask you, right, our platform runs in Docker. What does it mean, your platform? This is where pretty much your backend is configured, backend,
do you use to optimize
API,
the test when
API, and the UIs,
short period of time?
pretty much those services, okay? That's where all the services are running, the platform. Who configures this? My DevOps configures all this, okay? All I do in Docker is look for logs when tests fails. Test fail. So if my test fails, then this is one place where I can look at. If I'm not looking here, right? If I don't look at this, if I cannot find the issue here, then the next place that I look at, it's on these logs. If it's in the UI, if the application in the UI it's not working, then I look here, because this is where all the logs are coming in. But I usually tell my developer, hey, can you help me look at the logs? Pretty much, he does the job. I just look.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it similar to Log4j to look for the problems? Log4j.
Log4j just logs all the reports. So here, right?
It's not similar, right?
No. Log4j is a library that we use for our automation. So here is an upgrade to Log4j that provides significant improvements over its provides many improvements of it. No. It's mostly used for our testing framework itself here. Easy to log in in Selenium. So Log4j will generate for us that reports in our Java tests here. So whenever we execute these tests, if we have incorporated Log4j in our pom.xml, then it will create one here in our target. Okay, so I don't have it here, so I have it on a different project, but it's just the reports that we can look at in here. Pretty much that's all it is. It's not in the cloud. No, it is not in the cloud. It's not same thing as these Docker logs here. Docker logs is configured by the DevOps team. Docker itself, it is configured by DevOps. One easy way that I can explain what is a Docker, it's pretty much like, let me see here. Okay, so let's just think of this as a Docker image, okay? I have iCloud here drive. This is a drive. Inside this drive, I have many different services. One service is called Documents, another service is called Desktop, another service is Download, and such and such. Now, if I want to go inside each of these services, I just need to open that service itself and see what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for logs, then I need to go inside those logs and pretty much do what I need to do. Right? That's the goal of Docker. Docker in general, let me show you the image so you guys can have a little bit understanding how it works in real projects. Docker containers. You don't need to know, but if you come across in any company, then learn it. It's really good to have an understanding on what Dockers are. What's a Docker? Container images. These are just generic. Just want to show you guys from a real project. Docker and hubs, maybe.
So while you're searching, can I ask questions? How would you
Just trying to find one that's
how would you
real project.
optimize the long running tests or things like? Alex, so while you looking at it, can I ask you like a real quick questions?
Sure.
So one of the question was like, how would you optimize a long running test? And they asked me like what kind of strategy would you use to optimize the testing if you want a short period of time. So
Sounds good. So I'll tell you right now. We're gonna write that down as well. So
Okay.
Docker hubs real project. Let's see. Just wanna give you guys a picture of how it looks. Oh, seems like nobody wants to share. Okay, so pretty much Docker containers. Pretty much, let's say this is how it looks. You have one container, big container, and then you have different images. They call them images. So these are services. This could be UI, this could be API, this could be the backend, and maybe this is something else that's part of all this. If the server is down, then you look at the logs in the server. If the API is down, then you look at the logs in the API. If the backend is down, then you look at the logs at the API. That's how it normally works. So just have this image probably to help you understand, but you don't need to know, to be honest, Docker. If you don't feel confident, just tell them, in my project, we look at the logs. That's all I do. I'm looking at the logs. Those logs are pretty much this is how it looks. These logs help me find the error like this. Okay, so you need to look for this message that says error. Once I find that error, then I notify the developer so that we debug what is error or where this error is coming from. Pretty much that's all you need to say on regards to the platform, if they ask you. Our platform is in Docker, pretty much that's what's happening. But if you still are unsure, we need to discuss more, okay? Let me go on to the next question, and Montaja, you can, if you have another question, you can ask after I answer the other one, okay? So, how to optimize, how to improve pretty much runtime in automation. So what they're asking you is this. I have seen that a lot. So let's say regression is running in 1 hour. How can you improve it? Okay, so that's the scenario. How can you improve your tests? So first of all, I need to debug the the scenarios, test cases. Okay, so first of all, I need to debug the test cases and identify in the code if there is any wait time. So what normally happens is usually people, right, testers or people that don't know much about automation, they put thread that sleep a lot, okay? I do it in my project too, but developers don't know, so I don't really care. I should care, but the problem is that I'm learning C#, and C# is a little bit different than Java. Java I can do it with no problem, but C# is a little bit different. So that's why for now, I'm only using thread that sleep in some of my scenarios, which is not recommended. Okay, so thread that sleep, identify if this is used in the test cases. So remember, whenever we write the Selenium automation, let me see if I can go here. So here, second runner step definitions. Tests. This is API, log4j demo, basic data driven. Okay, so let's say here, right? We normally, this is what's going to happen. So in my current project, I go through the test cases, okay? I go through the test cases and I try to identify if there is any sleep times, thread that sleeps. Because what's happening is, let's say if there is a thread that sleeps anywhere in here, that it's waiting for 10 seconds, okay? That's already, here, we're already seeing that it's 1 hour. So now by just handling this thread that sleep from, let's say, 30 seconds, or maybe it's waiting for 1 minute, 60 seconds, right? And instead of using thread that sleep, we improve this. So how I fix this is by implementing a fluent wait, or a wait, right? A wait. You can say fluent wait, or what's the other one? Explicit or implicit, right? Implicit wait, where it's waiting for the condition instead of waiting 60 seconds. Okay, so here we already took down from 1 hour to what, probably we took 1 minute out, pretty much, right? That's already improving one test case. So what do we do in order for us to improve the quality of this project? First of all, we need to look at the test cases, identify if there is any code that has some type of wait period. What is the wait period? Is it some type of fluent wait? Is it implicit, explicit wait? So if it is, hard code thread that sleep, then I need to improve this by implementing a wait time. Wait for the element, or wait for this condition to be true, and then move on, right? So if this condition is true after 3 seconds, then it will go ahead and go into the next step. So that already is saving a few seconds. So if I identify, let's say 10 of those test cases, then it's already 10 minutes down, right? So it's not 1 hour anymore. So I'm saving 10 minutes for the regression testing. So that's how you can improve the running time in automation, by going over the code, implementing some type of wait or implicit, or some type of refactoring the code, right? So refactoring the code if, let's say, there are many objects. This is where Vecnasar's class is very helpful, right? If you guys remember, whenever we, in the pool, whenever it's, can any of you guys explain me about the pool and the heap? How does that work? if you guys remember, heap and pull, that was basic, right? When he was teaching. So we have one. Which one is heap? Which one is the pull? Left is what?
Heap.
If you guys forgot, we need to review that, okay? Why do I bring that up? It's because it makes sense for this question, okay? Now wait, just guess. Heap and pull memory in Java.
Shit.
Nobody? Okay.
Sorry.
So remember, we have the pull, right? We have the heap and we have the pull. We have also, so let me go ahead and just clean this real quick. I'm not gonna explain too much about it since I'm not expert on Java. I know enough to get me through anything, but here. Remember, in Java, right? We have a string pool. This is the pool, string pool. And this is the heap memory, right? I'm gonna call it a heap memory, okay? So whenever we call or whenever we say, let's say a string, S1, let's say S1 equals to hello, okay? This is pointing towards the pool, okay? So it creates one pool here. Then we have another one here, string 2 equals to hello. Okay, so again, because of the keyword hello, it is pointing to the same here, right? To the same pool. Now, if we create an object of, if we call into this string, so string, let's say 3 equals new string, what's happening? We say hi, right? Hi. What's happening here? Now this is being allocated outside, right? It's not inside the string pool anymore, but it is on the memory itself. Okay, so hi. Now remember here, whenever we are using objects or whenever we're creating new objects, it is pretty much allocating this data into the memory. So the time that it's pretty much sending here, let's just put any number, okay? I'm gonna say that it's taking 10 seconds, but here it is taking only 3 seconds. So that's why whenever we're working or whenever we want to improve our runtime in the application, we need to see here if there is unnecessary objects created, as well as are we using maps properly or hash maps, right? Why? Because or array lists compared to lists. Okay, sorry, array lists, and what's the other one? Trying to.
At.
Which one?
At.
Set?
That's, yeah.
Not that one. I'm looking array, just regular array, sorry. Okay, so what's an array list? What is an array? That's just an interview question, right?
Array is a fixed size for storing data, and array list is dynamic.
Okay, so array itself, it is fixed, right? That means that once we assign the value, if the value is, the value is 3, if the value is 3 itself, we cannot add any more, right? That's what the array is. But array list, we can add many more, right? We can keep adding more and more and more. So which one is taking more space in the, pretty much on our data? Which one is faster, array or array list?
Array.
Array list.
Array list is much faster?
No, just array.
You need to be confident.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. That's wrong. Array is faster, okay? Because array list uses a fixed amount of arrays.
Okay.
Always remember, whenever we are using array list,
Yeah.
we keep adding elements, right? We keep adding more elements and elements, so it keeps growing. It keeps growing. So the response time that we're going to be getting from this array list is going to be much slower than the array, because the array, once we say, okay, the fixed number is 1 or it's 10, that response that we're going to get for those arrays is going to be pretty fast, right? It's going to be maybe 1 second. Compared to the array list, if we have 10 and then we keep adding 20, 30, 40, now the response time that we're getting from the array list, it's slower, right? So that's why here, whenever we write any method in Java, whenever we're doing automation, we need to think of not only how should we store the data. Remember the web elements, if you have a table of elements, do you store it in web elements, and then what else do you do? You need to think of those methods, right? Whether you're going to put them in an array list, or is it better to put it in an array? If the value doesn't change, is it better to put it in an array rather than an array list? If you put it in an array list, then of course the response time would be higher, right? If you put it in an array, it will be much faster. If you know that this data doesn't change, if you know that the response is always going to be 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, then you can put it in an array instead of an array list, because by default, array lists take a little bit longer, right, on getting the response itself. So that's another way to improve your tests, going over the code here, refactoring the code if there are many objects, or there is a bad use of code, right? Such as let's just put one example, the one that we discussed: array lists versus array. Okay. And then if you wanna, talk about it, then just tell them, right? What's the difference between those two? So pretty much that should answer your question, how to improve the time run in automation, how to make it much efficient, much better. Pretty much is going over the code itself, identifying why it's taking too long to run. Maybe it's the application, right? So also I need to go over the application to see what's the response time from, let's say, each request. When you load a page, any application, if it's banking application, when you press log back in, how long does it take? Okay, it's taking me 2 seconds to load. So the next time if I log in again, how long does it take me, right? It takes me probably 1 second. So all those factors we need to consider whenever we are trying to answer this. Because you need to provide as many answers as possible. That's the goal, to answer many questions, okay? So here there is 3 different possible solutions that you can tell them. There is no right or wrong answer on those, but those are just based on your knowledge, okay? Any other question, guys?
We do 350 regressions and how many test cases should a tester write for 350 regression suites?
350 regression suites. Never heard about 350.
I mean, when we were preparing that, then Beck told us that we could say, if it's a small, then we can say 350. So.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You're saying 350 test scenarios, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
So, how long or how many test cases? you have in your regression testing. In my current project, okay, so I'm gonna go based on your number, okay?
In my test case.
We have 350
Scenario.
test cases. Each test case has about 3 to 5 scenarios, which is a little bit too much because remember, if you're saying 350 test cases, okay, let's get the Mr. Calculator. So if you're saying 350 test cases and each of them contains at least 3 to 5 scenarios, let's just put minimum 3 in there, multiply it. So we have about 1,050 scenarios in total here. So in total, I would say we have about 1,050 scenarios, which are negative and positive scenarios. But remember, that's a lot. This application is pretty old. That means that it was developed a long time ago, so that there could be 350 test cases. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Right now, in my project, this is just Alex's project. Currently, there are 105 scenarios actually. Sorry. Scenarios. 300. Those are scenarios. That means that each test case. So the way that they write it in my project is a little bit different. So, but in total we have 105 scenarios. It's not test cases. Test case is pretty much this here. One feature file. It's one test case. So let me go to. Where's my test? Not here. Should be resources. Feature file. So all these, right? So there is here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different test cases. Each test case has about 1 scenario, 2 scenarios, 3 scenarios, 4 scenarios, 4 scenarios here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 4. What is 8 times 4?
32.
I don't know, guys. 32. Okay, so we have 32 test cases in total. So inside each, we have 4. This is one scenario here. So we have 32 scenarios in 8 test cases. So your number needs to be somewhere, I would say anywhere between probably just 50 to 150, not 300. I think 300 is pretty large, and even for that number, it will take a long time to complete. So I would say here, this is the way that you need to do it. Okay, so having test cases. Okay, so in my current project. So let me switch this to 1. Okay, so remember 1 means your current project. We have 52. So we have. Let's put a number. Okay, let's say 110 test cases. Each test case has about 35 scenarios. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this one. In total, then those scenarios are negative, positive scenarios, pretty much. Those are negative and positive scenarios. And then for the next one, oops, where's the number 2? Number 2 is not coming. 1 second. There's number 2. So we need to come up for each project, okay? I'm gonna put this here. Like that, okay. So number 2, it's for and this one is second job, okay? So second job, or whichever is your second project, we had about, you can say here 50. test cases. Each test case had anywhere between, let's say here, 2 to 5 scenarios. Something different, right? It's not the same story, but it's something different. So for my third project or company, we had about, I would say here, 80 test cases. You can just say, I don't remember anymore because it was a long time ago. So I would say around 80. And we had about 6 test cases. I'm sorry, scenarios. I don't want to confuse test case with scenario. Scenario. Oh, each test, this is good, each test case. Yep. So we had about 6 scenarios per test case. That's pretty much it. So we have one answer for each of them. If they ask you about your second project, then just tell them 50. If they ask you about the last project, just tell them 80. But usually they always ask about just the current project. So just stick with this type of answer, okay? And they will also ask you how long does it take? How long is your regression?
2 hours.
So first one, you can tell them my regression in my current project takes about 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours. No, just let's say one. It's 110 test cases. For me right now, it takes about 1 hour. So I would just say 1 hour. Second project, took about, you can say it's only 50, so probably I would say 40 minutes. Third project, you can say took about 40 minutes as well. Anyways, they will not ask, but just have it written somewhere. So those are the questions that they should be asking probably in there. Now, what other question was it more?
So should we do reports daily or how? I mean, they asked me this question for the reports.
So
and where do I save my reports?
Oh yeah, that's always, they always ask that. Where do you save your automation reports or API reports, whatever type of report, okay? My reports are saved locally. So when I say locally, it means that once we execute this test case, if it passes, if this test runs, once it's finished running, if my test passes, okay, if it fails, good, if it passes, good. Okay, so once this is done, it generates this target folder here. Okay, it generates this target folder that holds my reports pretty much inside these files here. Now this file, it is saved locally. If we look at this location, where's my open rebuilding finder here? If I open it, it is locally here in my computer, right? That's what local means, my local computer, my PC, my laptop, pretty much. This one, I can say I save it in, it is saved in my local machine. That's the answer that they're waiting for. Also, it is saved in the cloud, okay? So this report here, it is also stored in the cloud. What does it mean in the cloud? Let me show you real quick, guys. AWS. 1 second. In the cloud, we have services. Those services are AWS EC2s, or let me see if I have any EC2. No, good, okay. There is services such as S3 buckets. S3 buckets are pretty much storage units. So it's pretty much a storage place. So here I can create one bucket called automation logs, right? I can create one automation logs. I'm gonna leave this location in the US. Whatever those are, that's fine. I'm gonna create my bucket. Bucket name must, okay, so it's saying that I cannot have uppercase, so automation logs. Pretty much that's what it wants. Create my bucket. Once I create my bucket, I need to navigate. So right now what I'm doing, guys, is I'm navigating with S3 buckets, and this is what I did at work. This is how you can explain in your projects or to those guys. So I was pretty much creating buckets in AWS S3 for my testing. For my logs, pretty much we use it as a storage where we upload, right? If you see here, I can upload folders, files. Here I can look for the document itself. So let's say, just find any document here. This one here, this is the reports for my tests. So I upload it. And pretty much I see everything in the cloud. Once it's finished uploading, so how do I do testing? I just verify to see if the data is present or not. Pretty much that's all we do. So I'm gonna cancel this because I don't wanna pay. Normally you pay for these services.
Do you use Redshift service too for analytics?
Redshift is a database.
Database? Because one of recruiter asked me about that. Their client need the Redshift. I told them that I just know about the service, but I never like a hands-on experience. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Like I said, in the interviews, you guys will have many different type of requests that you don't know, but just tell them that. You can learn it, yes. Like here, right? You see that this is a data warehousing. It is a database, Redshift. They use it for different type of services to store data, pretty much. You can do analytics in there. It depends what the company is using it for. So if they ask in general, do you have experience with Redshift? Just tell them I don't, but I can learn in no time. I have heard it, like just like you answer, right? I have heard it, but I haven't used it in my project.
Asked me about Athena, the service. I think it's also their service, AWS Athena.
Yeah. So let's go here. And if you guys want to learn, see, it's query data and S3 using SQL itself. So there is many services that AWS offers, and some companies they do use their services because it's cheap for them. Everything is stored in one place, everything is accessible in one place. But it doesn't mean that we need to use it. In this case, for us, we don't use it. We use PostgreSQL. Athena could be used for any other type of application that we probably don't have any idea how it works. Like here, right? Let me just click here. So pipelines, Dynamo database. Let me see if there is another one here, like AWS architecture. No.
And that's RDBS.
So S3 buckets, then AWS Glue, Amazon Athena. It goes through data analytics. So it's probably a company that's doing some type of data analytics. That's why they have all those services. They have Amazon Redshift as well. So probably they will ask more AWS questions than regular Selenium API questions. But if you want to learn it, just YouTube, and pretty much YouTube will tell you how to use it, what is it for and such. But we don't use it. I never used it in my project. I have heard about Redshift as well, but my project in all this time, I never used this. I have used AWS S3, yes, a lot. I have used pretty much S3 buckets, but not Redshift or Athena. Like I said, some companies will ask you that.
I told them, I mean, I don't have like a working experience, and they're fine. I mean, let's see.
Yep, that's fine. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just going to delete this here, service I don't need. Delete. That's what I'm doing here
I
in
have
AWS.
a question. Like, so if you keep your report in the locally, so when you run regression before release, do you have to send the report to your team as well?
Yeah, those are soft skill questions. Okay, we'll answer that. Okay, so let me just finish this here. So also, so where do we use save your automation report? In also QA has a dedicated space in AWS S3. Pretty much that's what it is. Okay, so here you're saying that QA, we have one bucket in AWS. So that's where I upload my reports, any type of reports, whether it's automation, API, excuse me, whatever testing I do, that's what I upload.
Is daily on a daily basis or a weekly
No.
basis?
No, you can say after I finish once I am done with my testing and I close my user story, my my reports are uploaded to a cloud. Only once you're done with testing. You don't upload it every day. You don't do it on a weekly basis because you don't know how long your testing is going to take you. It may take you 3 days. It may take you 1 day. It may take you 2 days and such. So that's why you don't say I do it at the end of the day. Even for me in my projects, I don't do it every day. I do it once I'm done testing, pretty much.
Thank you.
What was your question? I'm sorry, what the other one? Was it mostly on reports? I didn't catch the whole thing. Can you repeat the question? Was it Tessa or?
Yeah, I was asking like after you run the regression and you keep the report with like locally, at the end before release, do you have to send the report to the team as well?
Okay. After you run the regression, right?
Yes.
Do you send the reports to the team? That's a good question. Regression, okay, is running in, you can say Jenkins if you want, whichever you feel more comfortable with, but I feel more comfortable with GitLab pipelines. So regression is running in any of those, okay? Whether I'm just gonna actually put one, otherwise you guys will get confused. Jenkins pipelines, and once it's done, 1 second, guys. Apologize, I'm watching my kid on the camera as well. So once it's done running, it automatically sends the reports to 1 second. It's done running, it automatically sends the reports to their emails. If okay, so what do I mean with this? Whenever we run our regression testing or smoke testing or whatever testing, in this case, if they ask about specifically regression test, let me go ahead and show you guys. Then based on the configurations, we can configure for those jobs to be redirected into these emails, any email, whether it's your manager's email, your team email, maybe it's just one email. It depends on what you guys decide, right? So We will stick with one answer, so I will write down the answer. But this is how those reports look for, let's say, regression testing. Once it finishes regression testing, you get a report saying that it failed or it passed. If it failed, then you need to click pretty much where, this link that they provide to you. And that's how I verify in my failed jobs. Like, where did it fail? Why did it fail? That's what I do in my project. That's what you can tell them. So in my current project, regression is running in Jenkins pipelines, and once it's done running, it automatically sends the reports to their emails based on the configuration set. Because in Jenkins, you can configure so that it can be sent to anybody, right? You can configure to send it to Slack, to emails. You can set up maybe to any other type of application as well. So in general, my team gets the notification if regression passes or fails. If it's failing, I usually debug and try to find the error looking at the reports that it's generated in the pipeline, okay? So in Jenkins, whenever you're working with Jenkins, I don't know if I still have localhost 3000.
Localhost.
Jenkins run on 8080, right? Or what is Jenkins running for you guys? Is it 8000?
I think.
I don't think so. I don't think I have my Jenkins anymore. 88, right? Yeah, I don't think I have mine anymore. I probably deleted it. Anyways, I was going to show you guys that pipeline itself, but this is the report that you normally get. This is with the GitLab pipelines, but Jenkins can do the same thing. It can generate the logs, and you just click on the log. It will take you to the test case that it's failing. That's why here we're saying regression is running in the pipeline. Once it's done, it can be sent out to everybody. So in the meetings, you guys discuss who gets the reports, who doesn't get a report. Because some people don't want to get too many emails. They will say, please stop sending me, or don't enroll me into this application, pretty much, okay? Any other question? For reviewing, please, again, I shared this documentation, right? Just read it, right? And then try to mostly focus on the different type of requests, such as get, post, put, delete. Those are HTTP request methods that we normally perform. There is the given. If you want to understand more what given does, it is pretty much used to prepare the request. When then we perform all these different requests here. But if you want to just go to the point, we have the base URI, which is normally the HTTPS all the way to .com. And then we have the path, which is the endpoint here, okay? So if you want to discuss more or you want to explain them more, then you can just talk about this, the breakdown, right? This is just a breakdown of that URL endpoint that we're sending. But the test itself will begin here. So even this documentation is good for the interviews. In case if they ask you, you can just have it on your window and scroll to this documentation. What are the different status codes? Because they will ask you, what are the different status codes that you know? Pretty much there is status code 200, which is okay, 201 created, and then you can skip to the next one, which is 300 to the redirection. 400 when the client types, a bad request, and then 500 if there is any issues with the server, or 501, 503, depends on what's the response from the UI. In Rest Assured library, I use a request, pretty much such as, let's say, sending a post or a get request. In this case, I can talk about post request, where let's say if I'm sending a post request to an endpoint, Then I assert the status code by using assert method that comes from rest assure. And then also I am verifying the content type. The content type, normally I can verify if it's a JSON content type when I send a request to an API endpoint. Also, just keep scrolling down, keep going down, then I can look at the logs. Whenever I am performing rest assure, I look at the logs. The logs will tell me the details about the headers, parameters. There is many different types of logs in rest assure. Some of them are for the parameters, the body, headers, cookies as well. But mostly for my testing, I do assertions or I do validations with assertions. So when I write the test, the way that I write it, if you want, I can give you an example. I can say rest assure, which is the class that I'm using. Given I log into the URI with pretty much the URL that I need to. When I send a get request, this is a get request to this API, which is pretty much verifying also that the status code is 200. So log URI, this is login, right? This is logging the URL. This will return for me the entire URL in the response. That's what this log URI does. Okay, so there's different type of logs here that you can practice. All you need to do is copy this, put it on your test and run it and understand what the response is. Then if you keep scrolling down, you see that there is another request, which is mostly performing an assertion. So once I send a request to this API endpoint using post request, I assert that the status code is 200. Also, I assert that the status code and that the content type is JSON. I can perform that in one request. Also, I have experience using map from Java. I'm using the Java library, where I am storing the key value for the data, for the parameters. One of the ways that I'm using it is whenever I perform a login request. One second, guys. My little monkey keeps moving. So I use maps in which I am pretty much using key value pair. Now in this map, I am passing two parameters. One, it is the username, and then the other parameter is the password. When I perform a login request into my application, I am saving those parameters inside the map. I'm passing this map in the query params. Then all I do is I send a request to the path, post the request, and then I validate the status code as well as the application JSON. Now, this is passing the params. This is different type of parameters here, okay? There is many ways that we can pass parameters. We can pass it directly in the request, or like it's shown here, we can use a map and we can pass the map inside this query param. So there's many ways to do it. I'm just showing in this documentation the different methods. Also, you can use it like
ไม่
this
คิดว่ามันจะทวน
param.
ให้นานขนาดเนี้ย
Instead of saying params, you can use param.
แต่ถามว่าสำคัญไหม
so that
โคตร
it
สำคัญ
sends
เลย
this value. So just
โคตรดี
run one of these scenarios. They all are doing the same thing, okay? So just run one of them, get familiar, understand what this is doing. So all this is doing is pretty much putting the username and password. That's all it's doing, okay? Then all the way to the bottom, you will see that there is an entire API request: get, post, put, delete. Okay, so if you scroll through all these methods, it is running different type of requests. What is creating a post, get, there is the post again, put, and then there's the last one, delete. And then there's a little more details on that. But this should be good enough for you to review API. Just copy paste those methods, run it locally, and then see if you're getting the same. If you're getting results or not. I don't think on the market they ask about Kafka too much. If they do, then here is a few documentations about Kafka. Just go through this short reading. Pretty much it's more than enough as well. If you want to review Postman, here's also Postman test scripts. If you scroll down, you will see that in my current project, how I do verification of the status code using Postman. I write the script. How do I write it? Pretty much I say pm.test, which is one of the methods in Postman, and then the function which allows me to write this test. But I am verifying the response to have is status code 200.
9 คน
And then also I am verifying to see if, let's say, the content type is JSON. And then also I validate that response body. So this is my response body. Let's say it's a JSON response. How do I validate it? I write a test by saying, by saving the response JSON into a variable called data. And that's how I write my tests in Postman. Okay, so here's a documentation for Postman and a little bit about Selenium as well. So for Selenium, again, all you need to do is copy this method here, put it in your tests, just create one class called test and use testing G assertions. I think that's what this is using. Yep, set up testing G dependency. That's all you need, just testing G dependency and then copy paste this code. And it will automatically, also you need to point this to your Chrome drivers property. No, you don't need to do that. So once you execute this one, then you should be good enough. It will go ahead and perform a checkbox using the index. Then this other one here, it is the context menu. Then there is another one for dynamic tables. If they ask you about dynamic tables, this is a good scenario on how to handle the dynamic tables. This is one of the interview questions that they ask you guys. How do you split XPath? How do you split, or how do you cut in half an XPath? And it will be a weird question, okay? So what they want, pretty much it's here. Let me show you what the solution is. Okay, so before and after, so here. So why do we need to split this XPath that you see here? The first half, pretty much it's taking the ID, okay? So this first half, it's taking the ID. Let me go to this website so that you guys can see why are we doing that, okay? What's the goal of splitting the XPath? Inside this application that you see here, there is tables, okay? There is columns, tables. If you look at the first one, it says Marico Ltd. If I refresh the page, it has changed now to Jane Irrigation. If I refresh the page, it is capital first. If I refresh, time something else. Every time this value keeps changing. It's not stable. It's not fixed, right? The value keeps changing all the time. That means that if I write an XPath for, let me refresh, the name is so complicated. If I write the XPath for LLFL Holdings, when the next time this page loads, it's not gonna find it because it's very dynamic, okay? It keeps changing. So that's why here, let me go ahead and open this XPath, right? So we have an XPath. Where's my documentation? Here. We have this XPath that pretty much it's cut in half, okay? So I'm gonna copy this part, go back here, I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, so then I'm gonna go to the next one. And this is the second half for it, okay? So this is the second half. Like that. And then I'm gonna put here TR, so this is TR, A. TR, wait. Okay, so far it is going inside this application here. Inside this element, right? So this XPath that I have here, what is it doing? It is pretty much looking for this element called holdings. But there is 1 out of 26 searches, right? So 1 out of 26 searches. So in order for us to work with dynamic elements, right? In order for us to work with dynamic elements, we need to split this XPath. Sorry, where did it go? We need to split one to this string method called before, okay? And then another one to this XPath called after, okay? So what's happening here on this name? We are pretty much navigating to that element where the XPath before it's concatenated with I, okay? So what is I doing? It's searching on the first 100 results or iterations. Okay, so it will go ahead and iterate until it finds what it needs or what the answer pretty much is looking for. On this case, we write an if statement looking for this keyword. Okay, so it is a little bit confusing, guys. That's okay, it's normal. But what's the goal of splitting an XPath is so that we can pretty much work with any element that we need. We can pass inside this value here, right? Inside this value, we can pass any value that we want. Okay, so instead of, let's say, saying 1 in there, let me just put here. We can look for the second one, or maybe look for the third result, or maybe look for the fourth result, maybe look for the fifth result, 6th, 7th, 8th, or which one are we looking for based on our if statements here, right? If statement saying, if this name contains Anjata Parama LT, right? Then I want to perform these tasks. I want to assert. That's why, on Selenium, if they ask you that question, then you can use this. So along with that, there is other drag and drop. How do you use drag and drop? How do you handle drag and drop in Selenium? I use Web Element Action Builder, Action Drag and Drop, and such and such. Drop downs as well. There is a good scenario here for you to understand and details, explain you. Just review it. There is as well some scenarios, right? How do you handle upload files in Selenium? And I'll keep adding more and more. Okay, so I will send you guys this link so you can review it. Please do it and just keep practicing. Any question that you guys get, write it down and share with your teammates. That's what they're here for, to help you, as well as Google it. Google has all the answers, or YouTube as well. Okay. Any other interview questions that you guys were not able to answer? If not,
That's one more question. Like they were asking me since I mentioned on my resume that I use Jenkins for continuous integration, and then he asked me, "How do you do?" And exactly, I don't know how.
Okay.
I mean, we use it for continuous
มองแบบนั้น
integration.
นะมันคือแบบไม่น่ากินเนาะ
For continuous integration, what it is, it's
Just and all the developers changing, like we use Jira for that purpose, like or Git especially, where they make changes to the software. So should we really use as a tester in our project?
We do. The best way to understand it is, let me show you. Let me see if I can find that project. Framework. Framework. Just 1 second. Let's see if I still have this framework somewhere. This is the one easy way to understand
ได้ยินเขาเปล่า
all this API test. Let me see if I have this one here. Let me clone this real quick. I'll show you guys what does it mean with the pipelines. So just imagine that we are inside Jenkins, okay? I don't have Jenkins. I will install it and create documentation for you guys, but Kuba in Selenium, he explained about Jenkins. Clone HTTPS. Let me just 1 second. You guys can see this. What I'm doing is I'm just cloning a project. Let me go into my downloads. I'm gonna clone it there. Clone, we use git clone to clone a project. Just be familiar with those. And then we perform a oops. So what was the name? The git tests, right? This is the project. Okay, so we already have a git project here, right? You see it here? And then we do git status to see what's the status. It says on branch master. We are currently on the branch master, which is okay. So let's say here I'm gonna create a new file. Let's say a new test case 1.12. Let's say test case 12. I'm just gonna call it anything here. Let's just say it's no, not job. Let's just say that we created a new test case, right? So if you do git status, you will see that there is one new test case that is ready to be merged or pushed to master, right? So we perform git add, right? Whether it's all,
ตีหนึ่ง
or
แล้
if
ว
you want, you can just manually do it like that. Git add test case 12.txt. Get status again to see the status. That's green. It means that it's already ready to go, right? We're shipping it.
อ้าว อ๋อ ก็ฟังกูด้วยไง
We're calling Uber Eats to pick up the food. To git commit, -m, and then we put a message, right, saying test case 12 cover transfers functionality. Okay, so we did the commit and then we do
Oi.
git push, right? When we do git push, then that means that this is going into this git place, right? Okay, so far this is the process that you need to follow. Once we copy this git, we need to go into the link that I just copied. It will take us to the project itself. It's saying, okay, so your changes have been committed into the master. So here you are. Now it's updated, right? Now, as soon as it's updated, our pipeline, it's already being kicked off. It automatically runs, okay? So right now, test case 12, see, it ran, but it failed right away after 20 seconds. So if you see here, 30 seconds ago, this test case 12 was pretty much, it failed. So let me run it again. Run this pipeline. Run the pipeline. So now if I look at these pipelines, it is running, okay? So this is how the pipelines run. It's running. It is very much running until it fails. And once it fails, we look at the logs to see why it failed. Okay, so you need to click. It's easy to understand, right? If you look at it, it's giving you an error. So what's your next action? To click on it, right? You need to click and to find out why did it fail. So this is the logs that you need to look at. Error, job failed, exit, it's saying, okay, what else do I see here? That's pretty much it. I don't get too many details. It's just saying that there was an error and it says fatal, not valid object. And nothing else. Pretty much it's not very helpful to me. Maybe I'll ask my developer to help me look at the logs and see if he finds something useful. But this is how the pipelines are kicked off. In Jenkins, similar thing. When you push your changes, the same way that we did here, into the master, or whenever it's kicked into development or whatever is the environment, then the pipeline is triggered automatically. Okay, so let me now show you that scenario in live. So I'm going to create another one, touch. Let's say here, test case 13.
เองเขาเหลืออีกครึ่งนึงไว้กินตอนเช้าได้ปะ
Git status, right? There's one file ready. Git
ไม่อยากกินเยอะดึกแล้ว
git commit -m new test case. Okay, so let's say this is tester, right? Tester finished testing.
เอามา
Now his test changes. He will go ahead and commit and push
ขึ้นไป
to
เมื่อโปรเจกต์บอก
the master. So git push.
ขึ้นไปนอนข้างบน
Once
นะ
we push
พรุ่ง
to
นี้
the
ท
master,
เขียนกระดาษไปดิ
the pipeline
Yeah,
will
yeah,
execute
yeah.
automatically because we have
Like a one
configured
photo
this
here.
many
ขึ้นไปนอนได้
months
ปะ
ago. Okay, so once I push this git push, you will see that this will automatically trigger a new pipeline here.
3
See,
4
I didn't do anything, but this will automatically, what it did,
3 ชั่วโมง
it picked up that code from Git, from GitLab.
ใกล้ถึงครึ่ง
So what this test did pretty much,
ชั่วโมงกดอัด
we
อัด
went
ไว้
to the repository,
Gott
we
advert.
went to the repository, and whatever was the latest change, that's what it picked up and said, okay, you made a new change, so what I need to do is I need to go ahead and run a new pipeline.
เอาไว้วะ
Why am I running a new pipeline? Is to see if everything is working as expected, or if you broke something. In this case, I broke
เขาทำเอ
something
ง
because now it's
เขา
not
ทำเป็นเอง
working.
ไม่มีผัก
It is failing because I committed. So what's gonna happen now? There is an option here on the pipelines that allow you to pretty much either retry the test itself, or you can go back to the previous stage
แล้ว
itself.
ผิดกลุ่
But
มเดียวผิดกลุ่ม
we
เดียว
don't need
ผิ
to
ดกลุ่
do
ม
much
เดียว
on that. We just need to run our test. Once it's finished running in Jenkins, it kicks off a new pipeline automatically for us. This is configured
เพราะว่า
through some type of configuration. For GitLab, it's this type,
ว่า
which we'll learn during the class, but it's mostly practice. If you practice this 100 times, you will definitely learn it.
เขา
But
จะได้รู้
if
สึก
you
ว่า
just want to
ควร
explain
ที่
in
จะ
high
ได้กลั
level,
บแล้วเพราะแม่
then you can just tell them
Từ hàng
my
ra mà nó
pipelines
sống
that were
ở
configured
đây
by
là-
DevOps, because all these
Theo
configurations,
cô dạy
who
cho
deals
แค่บอก
with
ว่า
this? It's
แม่ให้
DevOps
กลั
mostly.
บแล้ว
อืม
Testers, they do it sometimes, but not always. And if somebody did it, maybe it was somebody before you even got to the job, because when you got to the job, this is already running.
เรากลับ
So
ไปหาแม่
all you need to do is explain in my current project, pretty much whenever I finish testing, when I push my changes
แต่หนูยัง
to
จำได้เลย
the master,
ที่เราจำ
it kicks off a new test,
แม่
a new
กลับไปหา
pipeline.
ลูกมัน
So sometimes the pipeline fails, and then all I do is pretty much go into the failed tests and failed pipeline and try to identify why it's failing. If it's failing, once I identify it, then I fix it. Pretty much, that's it.
โอ้โหแค่เนี้ยอีก2
Yeah,
ชั่ว
it's
โมง
still gonna be confusing. You need to do it. Unfortunately, for Jenkins, you need to. It's a hands-on practice. It's not something that you can just read. It's mostly a practice to do. Pretty much. That's all it is. Once you do it.
When we start jobs, so we get already made a framework, or we can start our own. Because this question now, one of the lead tester asked me, and I was like, there was a framework that I just continue working on how it was.
That's a good answer. If in the resume it says created framework from scratch, then you can tell them I created the framework from scratch. Or you can say I contributed to the framework that my teammate was creating from scratch. What does it mean, the framework from scratch? This is a framework from scratch. If you look at this framework, it's a very basic framework. Right now, I'm still developing, right? Because it's saying it's only got 2 packages here, even just 1 package. Let me look at the other one. Hold on.
เยอะไปเยอะไป
Okay, so let's say this one here. This framework only have 2 packages, utilities, and then the endpoints, and then some POJOs, but nothing's in there. So Montaja came in. She started adding some more tests or some utilities for my API or for my UI, whatever. So you can say when I joined the project, I contributed to the framework that my tester, the other tester, was creating. How did I do it? Pretty much I added some utilities, I created some feature files, I implemented some Cucumber BDD framework. Also, I added some log4j. And I mean, that is more, but I cannot remember right now, right? You can tell them that. And the only way to answer that is if you have something on your screen, because if you do it by memory, you will not remember. During that interview, did they ask you to share your screen?
So just one time for coding purpose only.
ไม่มา
Did they send you a link or share the screen? They say.
They want me to share the screen.
Okay. Did they ask you to open Word document or what?
Notepad.
Notepad. Okay, that's fine then. See, the benefit of having 2 screens, guys, it's you can move, your tests or whatever scenario to the other screen, and when you're sharing the screen, they will only see what they want to see. So if it's Java or if it's Selenium or if it's API that they ask you to code, just put, whatever you're looking at. If it's, let's say, if they ask you to code Java, then I would say have something open, especially for if you're not really good at coding. Becknosar has most known interview questions asked right in the market. 1 second here. Let me go. Interview questions. Becknosar interview questions. So just go there and open it on the other window. If you have 2 screens, just have it on the other side. If they ask you about, let's say, reverse an array or reverse a word, just have this in the other screen, and don't be too obvious, of course, but just look at it once in a while and just refresh yourself on how to write a reverse string, because like I said, we get nervous on the interviews and we forget how to do it. But don't be too obvious, right? So just look at it on the other screen, and the one that you're sharing, that's where you're going to be typing and explaining as well. So that's what you can do for Java. Java, it's a little more tougher than Selenium API or SQL. But like I said, throughout the interview, sometimes they don't even ask you to share your screen. So all you need to do is on your screen where your video camera is, just put everything, all your notes, go through them. If they ask you, just as a reminder, like what's the answer to it, and pretty much you should be at least a little more confident on answering those questions. Okay. Any other question, guys? So this one here, I'm gonna send it. Tanjira, Tessa, Jackie, do you guys have any questions that they ask you and you were not able to answer? If not, I think we have good enough content here. For the API itself, like I explained here, there is different layers, right, where you are testing endpoints. The UI has endpoints. The API pretty much is the connection between the UI and the backend itself. You can use applications. One of the applications that I use, it's this application called, what is it? Just 1 second, please. I don't think it's this one here. Let me see. Mm, it's not this one.
Usually the test leads, they ask you very difficult questions as compared to the if somebody else is taking your interview.
Yeah, that's correct. They do ask a little bit more since they are knowledgeable, as well as they are the ones that are going to hire you. But it's okay, guys. Practice always with the first interviews. There's gonna be a few of them that you will fail. Don't feel bad. Just keep going, and the more you do it, you will learn more because you're gonna start looking. If you find let's say, a question that you couldn't answer, Google it as soon as you're done with the interview, okay? And just learn it. That's how you're gonna get better. That's the only way to get better as well. I will share this document with you guys in general chat, whatever we did today. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Again, we're going to do another review for API. This time would be mostly coding. So next time you guys will you guys will have a framework that I will go ahead and create, and we will be writing scenarios like this, right? So where we are actually writing the code and understanding. But I think today most of the questions came in with understanding how should I link my project to the API itself, and how should I answer that question. See an idea where APIs are, how is it all linked? Again, the API is mostly the connection between the UI and the backend. It's just like the server, right? You are the customer, you ask the server, I want some fries. Server will take your order, will go to the kitchen, ask the cook to cook it, and come back with the fries. And then you will verify to see if those fries are good or they're raw, right? So that's pretty much the API. It's the connection between both UI and the backend, and all you do, it's pretty much here. This type of validation. You validate status codes, validate the data that you're sending, you validate the response data that you're getting. You make sure that this data works as expected, or if it doesn't work as expected, the status, the results, that's what you need to validate, okay? So that's it. It's already 1. Sorry for keeping you guys this late, but I feel like, if you keep reviewing, keep doing the interviews, you will definitely won't have any problems with the market itself. If you need one-on-ones, we can especially on the projects. If you're still having a hard time understanding the project, we can schedule. I'm mostly available at nights, but we can find a good time, to review it. Okay. Those who feel still uncomfortable with projects or don't know much, please reach out to me. But at least this week, give it a try. Okay, give it a try. Keep doing interviews. Like I said, you will fail some of them. Don't feel bad. Just keep going. There's gonna be one that they will like. They will like you, and if they like you the way you are, the way you're answering, and all those, that means that they're not really waiting for somebody very experienced, right? Also, they're not those type of people that will give you a hard time because they understand your background. They understand that you're able to answer those questions to your best knowledge, and they don't have, let's say, higher expectations that they want to hire somebody that's very technical, but they want to hire somebody that they want to work with. Okay, so just keep waiting until that opportunity comes up for you guys. You will find a job. I am pretty sure of that. Just be consistent. Okay, so I already sent this document. I'll send it to you as well, separately. But if you want to set up one-on-ones next week, just let me know ahead of time. But at least this week, give it a try. Write your own ideas, just like I did for my each project. Smoke testing, right? What is smoke testing? For my current project, like how much am I making? What's my role, right? What's my role? Screenshot of the application that I was going to explain. This gave me a little bit more idea on what to talk about, how to visualize it, how to explain for each project. This is one project, this is another project, and this is another project. That gives me a little bit of an idea on what to explain. Where did I get the screenshots from? Like I said, many of you guys have applications, the banking applications, you guys have healthcare applications, you guys have cable applications, you know, you guys watch TV, you guys have phones, right? AT&T, all those applications, you can just log in, grab one small functionality that you want to talk about, and start taking your notes, same way that we have done in our document here. Just make it easy for you, review it, and then pretty much use that as an example, okay? That's it, guys. Thank you so much, and hope you guys can get some sleep tonight and keep doing good on the market, okay?
Thank you, Alex. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Bye.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Just set up time, okay?
Thank you.